Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day we delve into the dynamic world of technology and its impacts on our lives, business, and even world. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we're navigating the complex waters of securing enterprise data in the generative AI era. And in today's episode, we're going to explore the multifaceted challenges and opportunities that arise when integrating generative AI into business processes. And we'll also discuss risks like privacy concerns, the potential for biased or inappropriate content, and delve into some of the strategies for governing sensitive data effectively. But how can organisations balance the benefits of AI with the need for stringent data control and privacy? What role do advanced techniques like differential privacy, synthetic data, and federated learning play in mitigating these risks? And crucially, how can a collaborative approach involving cross-functional teams help in ensuring responsible AI adoption? These are just a few of the things that we're going to be talking about today with my guest. He's the CEO and president of a company called Securiti.ai, and his name is Rehan, and he's a pioneer in the realm of data security and privacy. And security is also reshaping the way we think about data management and protection in this age of AI, offering solutions that empower organisations to harness the power of data while safeguarding sensitive information. Now, before we get today's guest on, it's time to give the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily a big shout out because, as you know, on this podcast, every single day I aim to demystify technology and share stories of how businesses are solving real-world problems in business, our life, and even world. Now, one of the things that I see time and time again is that legacy managed file transfer tools, or MFTs, are looking increasingly dated, and they lack the security that today's remote workforce now demands, especially in a world of hybrid working. So obviously, companies that continue relying on outdated technology put their sensitive data at risk. This is one of the many reasons why I have partnered with Kiteworks, which is the most secure MFT on the market today. Now, if you're saying, Neil, that's a pretty big claim, how can you say that? Well, Kiteworks MFT suite is FedRAMP moderate authorized, which means they're audited yearly and continuously monitored by a certified third-party assessor. So if you want to find out more and step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks, simply visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. But now it's time to get today's guest on. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Rehan is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much for hosting. My name is Rehan Jalil. I'm the CEO for Securiti.ai. It's a company based in Silicon Valley. Our focus is for enterprise to enable enterprises to use their data in a safe manner with the most advanced technologies like generative AI. And when I say safe, it really means to understand where the data is and to make sure that it is secure, to make sure that it is being used in a privacy compliant fashion, and it's governed in the most responsible ways. And that actually, data is the fuel for the innovation, particularly in generative AI. And that's the charter from the companies to enable that use of data with generative AI.
And of course, we have lasted about 32 seconds without saying generative AI, but it's all anybody's talking about at the moment. And we are in this era where generative AI is rapidly evolving. From arriving on the scene November 2022 to where we are now, and it really seems to be ramping up. I was reading a story where Microsoft was saying that they're implementing at scale right now. But the question I've got to ask you is, how do you balance the innovation benefits of AI with the imperative needed to maintain data control and privacy and all those belts and braces approaches to IT?
Yeah, I think that's the tension. Yeah. If you talk to the enterprises, they have a huge appetite. What has happened is the biggest service I think this ChatGPT launching directly into the consumer land has done is that opened the imagination for the most senior leaders within the enterprise, including the board members and the CEOs and the executives. And they all are thinking that why they should not utilize this most innovative way of using their data. But of course, the tension there is that this data actually has sensitive information. It has their intellectual property. If you're an organization with personal information, you're under privacy laws. If you're an organization which does finance, you're under all kinds of regulation. So that's the tension, that without AI, without data, there is no AI, right? This is the primary field. And I think that's the tension that organizations have. So to do that, organizations generally, they would want to have a clear understanding of what data is there. Generally, that's the journey is going to start from. And understanding that which data is under certain kind of regulation, which data is under certain kind of internal policies that cannot be used. And taking the journey from there on to ensure the data going into the AI models is compliant, is cleaned, is sanitized, and the interaction of the end users to which they're offering services to their own AI models is being monitored in a way that it's not being abused, or it's not being manipulated, or it's not being attacked. I think that's the tension. So this is a whole brand new area. There's no question there is a huge appetite, but the guardrails have to be put in place in a way that you enable the organization to leverage the most advanced technologies, but stays within those guardrails such that there is no mess up that happens.
And you mentioned the guardrails there, and that becomes especially important, especially with content generation concerns that we're seeing right now. And with the rise of AI-generated content, what additional measures do you think are necessary to address the risks of things like biased or inappropriate content generation? Because we see so many different stories online. And recently I saw, I think it was DPD, a parcel form, and their AI chatbot was saying inappropriate things out to the public. These are little instances that we're hearing more and more of, aren't they?
Absolutely. So think of this as if you're a large consumer brand and you're offering some prompt interface, so you're offering some service which you're counting on generative AI. And if it has such issues, which it has, let's say, abuse of language, or it has bias, or is creating content which is hallucinating and is fake, as directly brand damaging, right? So to do that, many organizations, what they have to look at is, I would say, two layers. One is actually the foundation piece of the model. There are certain models which will have more of these issues than less. They will hallucinate more, or they will generate inaccurate answers, or they may be trained on data that you do not want to be using, right? So understanding that within the organizations, which AI models are blessed to be used, or which AI models are not blessed to be used. I think that's a basic, sanity, and that has to be established. What we're seeing is that within organizations, there is a groundswell of adoption of a variety of different models, because large organizations, there'll be different development teams, and they may have choices, and a lot of things are open source and available through APIs. There's a groundswell. Whereas organizations, they try to put some level of clarity on what is allowed and what kind of models are allowed. That's where it generally starts. Having a crisp clarity on what AI models are being utilized inside the organization, having a catalog of it, understanding and assessing the risk of the models itself, and prohibiting certain ones to not be used versus blessing certain ones. That's where it would start. Secondly, how do you marry your data and enterprise data, which has often consumer information, which has often trade secrets, in a way that never gets out to the public in a way which is offensive, which is damaging to the company, or which the information should not go out. Meaning that I will say there are two things. What I call is left of the model, but data is coming into those models, whether for training purposes or whether for some kind of an inference level search. Inspecting that data, sanitizing that data, making sure that it is actually compliant with your internal policies. And secondly, when questions are being asked from these models, making sure that that interaction is being monitored, and there, again, certain kind of rules are put in place so that even if mistakes are getting done, it is not getting out in the wild in the public. And doing certain level of system level testing to ensure that your internal wish list of the way you would want these models to behave in your organizations are being accounted for. That's something has to be done both at the model level, at the system level, to ensure that these things don't happen.
And what are the most effective data access, usage, or retention policies that companies should be looking at implementing to better safeguard sensitive data in this new generative AI landscape? Is there anything that you're seeing here that is particularly successful or important?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question because it creates a new challenge.
Yeah.
If you train your model, let's say if somebody is training their own models, and if you put the data inside those models, it's very hard to actually control the access and entitlements. And of course, even deletion of selected data out of those models is very, very difficult, even at this point in time, right? There is a certain level of lack of clarity on how would you manage that. So having certain level of ensuring that you have good record of what data is going into these models and what is being accessible, and then how do you take it out of it? I think it's an open question still if you go put straight in the model itself. So version control of these models and is important. Even if you using it for inference purposes or RAG-oriented implementations, there's still new techniques have to be put in place that if certain data has gone into your vectors, as they call it, and then because you're doing some certain level of RAG implementation or vector search implementation, same question arises that if I need to take certain data out for multiple reasons, either for retention reasons or for subject rights and others, how do I implement that? That's still an open question, and new techniques are coming to actually solve those issues. But no question that while we're trying to fit this brand new innovation into our data tech stack, these things must be accounted for, must be well thought through. Auditability of what data has gone into these models, auditability of what data is going into what vector searches, and having techniques available for you to selectively take the data out on a need basis, whether for retention, whether for subject rights, whether for something else in the organization.
Completely agree with you. And you mentioned some of those techniques for mitigating risks there. And something I try and do on this podcast every day is demystify some of those techniques that people might be, or business leaders might be hearing about, but unsure on how they would work in their world. So can you expand on how advanced techniques like things like differential privacy, synthetic data generation, and federated learning can play a critical role really in enhancing data protection in the context of generative AI?
Absolutely. I would say that particularly if you're utilizing certain data directly for training purposes, in which it'll be very difficult to actually remove certain personal information later on, or it will be very difficult to actually do a certain level of entitlement controls. It is imperative to actually understand what kind of use case that is. And in certain use cases, instead of using the original data with the personal information, with the personal identifiers, you would want to convert into either an anonymized version. In certain cases, anonymization would just work fine. And in some cases, you want to create a differentially private version of it. And for just to explain what it does is that when you have original data, which is personal information which can identify an individual, instead of using it because it will violate a bunch of privacy laws, you could convert it mathematically by inducing certain level of noise into the original data in a way that the converted data maintains the statistical nature of the original data set, but it removes the ability to identify who the data belongs to. At a super high level, that's what it does. And it could be quite useful in many use cases that you're trying to basically take the information within the original data set and make some learnings out of it, but you don't care about, in those scenarios, don't care about the actual identifier, and it's used in a great fashion. Now, if you're utilizing in a vector search kind of a use cases where you actually want to, identify that information, but you have other guardrails around it, then those techniques probably not the most appropriate to utilize. So literally for an organization, there has to be some toolkit, an ensemble of techniques available that certain use cases where identifying the individual is not necessary. In fact, you want to take it out, and differential privacy play an amazing role primarily for structured data. And where you would want to actually identify the individual for whatever reasons, either you go to, tokenizing and de-tokenizing on your side, or if you have other guardrails available just for internal purposes, then you go to basically straight to vector search.
And I think it's easy to get lost sometimes in the technology itself, in the policies and the regulations, etc. And I think it's people and the importance of cross-functional collaboration involving teams from various disciplines. That's where a lot of the most exciting things happen. But how important do you see that in developing and implementing effective data policies and AI ethics guidelines?
It's a phenomenal question, particularly as it pertains to data.
Yeah.
If you think about data, there are multiple stakeholders. You clearly have a CIO and a chief data officer who are chartered in some ways to make the best use of it. Then you have privacy teams who care about data because they want to make sure that while the data is being used, privacy laws are being entertained. Then you have security teams. You want to make sure this data is not stolen because, if data is stolen, it has direct impact on the market capitalization of the company. Companies lose billions or tens of billions of dollars if something like that happens. And similarly, you have compliance teams. Similarly, you have, data governance teams who want to make sure guardrails of entitlement teams. Now imagine this whole new thing shows up with generative AI. And the appetite to use within the organization was super high. There are hundreds of use cases in a single organizations, literally. You talk to some large organizations, they literally have hundreds of use cases they can be utilizing it for. And that's where the collaboration is a must-have. That there needs to be what we call for a clear visibility, like a data command center. This data command center should give visibility to all stakeholders with a common source of truth that this is what the data we have. This is what the rules apply on it. This is where the potential privacy issues apply. This is the internal policies apply. Or this would be some kind of easy way to have clarity across teams with a common source of truth. That's what the concept of data command center is, that everyone can see from their lens on this common source of truth. If you get that in place, then you can take the inputs from different stakeholders. Security teams can understand, look, if you're using this AI, but I need to have certain kind of cleanup of data, classification of data, I need to have some kind of guardrails on other than firewalls on the data. If you do that, and if you apply these policies, I'm good. They can come and say that on this data. If the privacy teams can come and highlight that what would they need in terms of mapping how the data is being used with which AI models, what data cannot go to these AI pipelines, they can provide their input because they have everyone has a common dashboard to see what kind of data we have. And I think that's really important that as we go to this whole new world of generative AI, particularly I'll say, which I've missed to kind of highlight, is that the previous world of BI, business intelligence and decision-making AI, is very different because most of the data there we utilized was structured data. With the generative AI, the biggest advantage is the machine's ability to understand human language, which is unstructured. That is the biggest novelty here, that any language, generative AI can actually understand, and then of course generate in that form. This is brand new. So having a way to, with clarity, understand where is our unstructured data, what's inside it, same for what is the structured data, what's inside it, and then what rules apply. I think that's how the collaboration can happen. I believe this whole new era is making sure that you, just like people have network operation centers and they have security command centers, there needs to be a data command center where you have clear visibility and how it varies and what you're going to allow to be married with most modern AI. It needs to be in place for this collaboration.
100% with you on that. And as generative AI continues to evolve, we're seeing governments all around the world react with AI acts, AI pacts, and so much more. And it can be very intimidating space for businesses at the moment that maybe want to dip their toes in the water. They know that they need to leverage AI, but equally a little bit concerned about the regulations that are waiting in the future. So how should companies adapt their policies now to stay ahead of emerging risks and ultimately comply with those evolving regulations?
I think firstly, I would say these regulations are extremely important.
Yeah.
Because the superpower of some of these language models is just insane. And this, it's not that this is it. It's advancing super fast. So having these regulations in a responsible way where it doesn't slow down the benefits of the AI, yet actually it provides you the guardrails around it. I think that's actually important. I think that has to be embraced in some openly, I would say, by the organizations. Now, having said that, these the regulations, they are talking about utilization of information. What can you do with it? Utilization of data. What kind of use cases that you can have with it. And to do that, the organizations require the tech stacks to facilitate the layer of intelligence that understands not only your data and your AI models, but understands the regulation and can guide the organization. In a way, these tech stacks should guide the organizations to enable the use of AI in a safe way, but not kind of block it, right? So I think that's the balancing act is going to be that, adopting the technologies that will help the organizations to go use the AI, but also, ensure that while the use is going on, they have clarity on that they comply with the global AI regulations. And NIST AI RMF, which is the RMF stands for Risk Management Framework, which is provided by the NIST. Similarly, you have EU AI Act, which is getting out there. You have to have one way to understand that within the use of your data in AI, how these regulations map, and in some automated fashion, you should be able to tell at any given time if you comply. See, the historical method, I would say legacy methods of complying by doing surveys and by doing paper exercises once in a year to say whether we complied or not, that won't work here. The data is changing very fast, the models are changing very fast, how data is getting married with the models is changing very fast. You really need another layer of software to make sure that's happening and it's being compliant.
And one of the things I've seen over the years is when an organization implements new technology or a new tech solution, is they quickly run into problems, not with the technology itself, but the changing of a culture, that office culture that needs to evolve and adapt to make leveraging that technology a success. So with that in mind, on this side of things, what strategies do you recommend organizations can take to better promote a culture of data responsibility and ethical AI practices, ensuring that responsible adoption of generative AI technologies? It's a huge talking point right now, isn't it?
This could be the biggest impediment, and it goes to the culture of the company.
Yeah,
I think it's creating a bit of an awareness inside the company. This phase in the adoption of AI, there will be many companies who will be left behind, right? So they'll become legacy companies. They will not be the companies who will be, and there's some smaller outfits may just use the AI in a way that it can kind of outpace in a much more innovative fashion to legacy plays, whether it's in healthcare, whether it is finance, whether it is any of the industry. And I think having that clarity within and the education within the organization, that for some companies, for many organizations, I'll say it could be existential if they don't actually move fast in a responsible fashion in a way to adopt this innovation coming out of the generative AI. I think I would say that having that clarity, providing that within the organization, being open about it, letting people experiment with it actually is very important. Some companies may, just put the guards down and say, look, cannot use AI. And I think that will be a mistake, huge mistake. It is a balancing act. And I would say a lot of it has to do with the culture within the organization, where they allow you to experiment with new things or not.
And we've talked about the challenges for many businesses, and I think as individuals, it become very challenging trying to keep up to speed with the pace of technological change. And we've all got to almost embrace a state of continuous learning. So a question I've got to ask you is, where or how do you self-educate to keep up to speed with this pace of tech change?
Yeah, I think if you, in your mind, if you have this spirit of have this curiosity, I would say, to learn new things, or have this sense that, look, there are all these new things to learn. For me, I think in generally, I would say is that there's a lot of resources on the internet. I mean, at this point, you can go ask, in fact, ChatGPT on a bunch of things. So if somebody wants to learn at this point in time, information is just out there. It just needs a little bit of personal motivation and dedication to time. It's like it has to be part of your daily ritual. It has to be part of your daily life. Just like you do rest of the things habitually, I think just keeping an eye on what's going on in your area, because there's a ton of things to learn. You can be very, very well be distracted. In the areas that interest you, or the areas that tie to your profession, or the areas that you're really passionate about, I think it almost becomes a daily ritual to keep an eye what's going on. And of course, having your own thinking along the way, what is the right way of actually doing things. But that makes the life actually a lot more fun. And the humans have this, I would say, the desire to learn and contribute, and that makes life fun.
Yeah, completely with you on that. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about everything we talked about here, and maybe ask your team a few questions, or follow you on socials, all those kind of things, where would you like to point everyone listening?
I think you can check out a few things. One is www.security.ai. You can check those things out. And other is if you're trying to learn about AI governance, you can go to aigovernance.center. You can find a lot of resources to understand how to best govern AI. There's some certification courses there also. And in general, if you'd like to keep up with going on, just follow us on LinkedIn, on our LinkedIn channel.
Well, we covered so much in our conversation today, from securing enterprise data in this generative AI era that we all find ourselves in, exploring governing sensitive data, mitigating risk with some fantastic techniques there, and also the importance of people, collaborative implementation, and ensuring responsible generative AI adoption by balancing AI benefits with data control and privacy. It is a huge topic that we could talk about for hours, but I'd love to invite everyone listening to share their thoughts and the experiences that they're having at the moment, and maybe we can all keep this conversation going. But just a huge thank you, Rehan, for coming on here today and starting this conversation. Thanks for sharing your thoughts today.
Neil, thank you so very much. Really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much for hosting. Really appreciate it.
So as we wrap up today's episode talking about securing enterprise data in this generative AI era, I think it's clear that the journey towards responsible AI adoption is both challenging and rewarding. And the balance between innovation and data privacy, the importance of understanding sensitive data, the critical role of advanced data protection techniques, all these things highlight the need for a well-rounded approach. And remember, the key to success lies in collaboration, continuous learning, and staying ahead of the evolving regulations. And as we close, I'd like to ask you, everyone listening, how do you or your organisation tackle the challenges of Gen AI? What strategies have you found effective in balancing innovation with data security and privacy? Please share your thoughts with me. Let's keep this conversation going. techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Love to hear your thoughts on this one. But until next time, this is Neil signing off from the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Remember, stay curious and informed in this ever-evolving tech world. But thank you for listening, and I will speak to you all bright and early tomorrow morning.